Welcome to day 5 of Discovering God's Plan for You, VBS. We're going to start out with our memory verse. Let's say it together, Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are the called according to his purpose. We've kind of worked our way through it, but I want to point out a couple things. Notice the words we and them. It's not the word I and me. Sometimes God allows things to happen to you that, well, they're about you in the idea that they're tests and they either make you bitter or better, right? But sometimes they're part of God's bigger plan too. And that's a privilege to be part of that. The Bible says sometimes we go through hard things and find comfort in God so we can help other people through those hard things. Joseph in our story, he went through some hard things. I mean, you know, he was sold as a slave. He was accused of something that he said no to, and he was accused of trying to force that issue. He in prison there, he was forgotten about. Now he's ruler in Egypt, and he's ruler in Egypt so he can help some people, save some people. We're going to find out from our lesson is even to save those that caused him so much trouble. Well, today God's plan is about forgiveness. If you're going to live in this world and you're going to live peaceful with people, you're going to have to forgive people. And you're going to have to hope that they forgive you. In fact, that's kind of how it works. We'll talk about that more in the second lesson, but Joseph was going to get a chance to forgive his brothers. Face to face, after all that they did, it went something like this. As our story starts, the 7 years of plenty have ended. Joseph was faithful to the task that Pharaoh appointed him to. He gathered up grain so much that you couldn't count it, didn't number it, they didn't even know how much they had. He had it all stored up, and now it's 2 years into the famine, and Joseph has been selling to the Egyptians, and sounds like other countries too, because it said the famine was in all the countries. In Canaan, Jacob, he looks at his sons, and now there's 11 of them left, but only 10 end up going to Egypt that first time. He looks at his sons and says, go down to Canaan, or go to Egypt, go to Egypt and buy us some grain. I've heard there's grain there. So they pack up their donkeys, whatever, and they head for Egypt. When they get to Egypt, the person they have to stand before the person that sells the grain is Joseph. They bow low before Joseph, and Joseph knows who they are. But they don't recognize Joseph, and Joseph remembers his dream about them bowing before him. We're not told why he does it, but Joseph speaks roughly to them. Joseph says, you're spies. You're just here to spy out the land. And they said, no, we're not spies. We're 12 sons of one man. One's not. And the youngest one, Benjamin's at home with our father. He said, well, if you're true men, the only way I'm going to believe you is if your youngest brother comes. Well, he put him in prison for 3 days. And at the end of 3 days, he comes and he talks to him. He says, I fear God. He says, you know, I'm going to send you back. We're going to keep one of you bound so you can bring back your younger brother and prove that you're true men. Now, they didn't know that Joseph knew who they were, and they didn't know that he could understand them. And they said, we're really guilty. This all happened because we're really guilty considering our brother Joseph. We heard his cries, and we didn't help him. Think about that. This is 22 years later, and they still feel guilty. Because they were guilty. They were going to need some forgiveness from God and from Joseph. Anyhow, Joseph sends 9 of them back with this grain he can carry. He had their money put back in their sacks. On the way they stop and they open up their sacks and they find their money and they think, oh, we're in trouble now. And so they go back to Jacob. Now, as I mentioned, Jacob didn't let Joseph's younger brother go with him because Benjamin had kind of taken Joseph's place as a favorite, you know what I mean? So they went back and they talked about the ruler of Egypt, said, oh, he spoke roughly to us, he took us for spies. Simeon's still tied up there. He wouldn't let Simeon come home. He said we couldn't see his face unless Benjamin goes with us. Jacob just said, my son's not going with you. Well, finally their grain ran out, and Jacob said, go back to Egypt. And they said, we can't go. We can't go unless you send our younger brother with us. If you send him, we'll go. And he didn't like that, but finally Judah stood up and he said, I will guarantee that Benjamin comes back to you. I will be the guarantee for him. So finally Jacob said, okay, take some nuts, some of her balm, some of her honey, a present for the ruler there, and take double money. Maybe it was a mistake, and go back and God show you mercy before the man. So they head back. They head back to Egypt, and when they get there, Joseph's servant takes them right into their house, and they're really scared now. They're pretty sure that the only reason they're there is so they can take them and make them all slaves, because they didn't pay for it. And so they say, wait, we brought double money back. We didn't mean to take it without money on us. We don't know how that happened. And Joseph's servant said, don't worry, I had your money. God gave you treasures in your sacks. Brought Simeon out of prison, and they all got ready. They all got ready to eat before Joseph. Now when Joseph came in, he saw his younger brother Benjamin. He went someplace. He had to find a place to cry privately. Maybe just because it had been 22 years since he saw his brother that was closest to him. It'd be pretty hard to just be away from someone that you didn't want to be away from no fault of your own. Finally, he came out, he ate with them, and they talked, and they were all happy. But Joseph was still not sure where those brothers were at. He had one more test for them. He told his servant, he said, hey, fill their sacks full of grain as much as they can carry. Put all their money in their sacks, but take my special cup, the one that I use to make decisions with, and put it in the youngest brother's sack. The servant did that. He did what he was told and sent him away. And shortly after he left, he told his servant, you go chase after them. And you give them a message from me. You tell them, my master says this. Why have you repaid me evil for good? Why did you take my cup that you know I use, my special cup that I use to make decisions with? And they said, he caught up to him and said that. And they said, why would we do this? Why would we do such a thing? We brought back all our money from before. Why would we take that? Look, if you find that cup with us, we'll be your servants. The servant said, fine. Whoever I find the cup with, they'll be our slave, and the rest of you can go home. So they started searching. The oldest to the youngest opened each sack. When they got to Benjamin's sack, there came the cup. Oh, they all cried out, and they tore their clothes, and they all loaded up their animals and went back to Egypt. There in Egypt, they fell down before Joseph, bowed again. They ended up bowing 5 times before him, by the way. And Joseph says, why did you repay me evil for good? Didn't you know that a man like me, didn't you understand that a man like me could certainly figure it out? Why would you do that? And they just said, we don't know what to answer. We don't even know what to tell you. We have nothing to say. And he said, well, I'm gonna just, you guys can go, don't worry, you guys can go. I'm just going to keep your younger brother here because he's the one that took the cup. But remember, Judah had promised to be a guarantee. He stood before Joseph and he told him about his guarantee, how his father would probably die if he didn't come back, and how he promised. And he said, please make me a slave instead of Benjamin. And at that, Joseph couldn't take it anymore. He had everybody out of there, and he started crying, and he said, I'm Joseph, your brother, come here, see me. And they were scared, but finally they came, and he hugged his brother Benjamin for a long time and cried. He hugged them all and cried, and he said, don't be mad at yourselves. You meant evil when you sold me here, but God meant it for good. He brought me here so that many people could be saved alive. And don't worry, I'm going to take care of you here in Egypt. I want you to bring my father back and your families, and we'll give you the best of the land of Egypt. And so he sent him back with carts and supplies, and he moved his dad, Jacob, his 11 brothers and all their families into Egypt and took care of them. because he understood that it was God's place to take care of what his brothers did to him and not his. And he understood that even though it was bad, God used it to do good.